All right. Well, tonight we brought Sivrid in with us. Sivrid, welcome to the show. Sivrid's also our producer tonight. So, but first, I'd like to congratulate Sivrid for being kind of put on vigil. He has he'll be knighted coming up here shortly. He's the fun part about this is I think we've seen a lot of people from the show, especially a lot of the coaches like Louis inside and Sean and Brennan and Helga and all of these people have opportunity to perform and win in large tournaments lately in the last few years. And Sivrid's been around since we started this, and he's been part of our Sunday kind of Zoom footwork stuff we did, and he really, not only himself but his son, really focused on using what was downtime for a lot of people to excel. It's not Sivrid's new. He's by far not new. He's been doing this for a very long time. Sivrid, how many years?
32, 33, something like that.
Well, about damn time. But I think, it's been fun to see some of the people that have been part of our shows and that have kind of followed us through this time be elevated and things like that. I think, Tristan, we were just talking about this before we got onto the show, and I thought I really liked the discussion you took regarding kind of being around and listening to the talk. Why don't you talk about that a little bit and let everybody kind of jump in?
Yeah, having seen many people come into the fighting realm and ask, what do I need to do to get better? What should I do? And what can I do right now? Kind of like they're impatient and they're like, okay, I want to be good. And so they come in all gangbusters and they're ready to do push-ups. They're ready to go out and get whatever gear they need. And they want to do it by the weekend. And one of the things that I've seen the successful people do, firstly, is they exercise a bit of patience. This is going to be a longer road than what they can do in the next month. But really to come in and just start to absorb and learn the language and learn what fighters, especially successful fighters, how they talk, what they talk about, the concepts that they find important. You start to absorb those and understand about fighting, you will start to gain insights as to how it works. You might not be able to do it. Your body doesn't know it yet. But when your mind starts to learn and understand what it should be looking for, what it should be trying to comprehend and process and understand, then your body can follow it. If your mind is scrambled around and you're just trying to gain little nuggets and find secret techniques and look for the hidden gold that's gonna make you somehow unbeatable, you're gonna wind up going the wrong path. And that was one of the things that I wanted to see happen with Coach's Corner from the very beginning, is by having these conversations, you can listen and learn from successful fighters, from people that teach, that understand fighting, where your mind should really be and what you should be thinking about. Not get distracted by trying to get tricks in your repertoire and things like that, but to really understand what the important aspects of fighting are, so you don't get distracted. Once you can grasp those, you can pick up fighting quickly and not get distracted by nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense in the martial arts realm, and the FCA is no different.
Totally agree. Sivrid, I mean, I guess, and I don't want to draw this out too much, but and really Bess, you too. But you've been here for a while now, and you've been obviously around us for what now, 3 years now, Sivrid. And I guess if you look back at what you thought about fighting, you came back after about a 10-year break. What you thought about fighting 10 years ago compared to the understanding of fighting you have now, because of between the shows and all the different content that's been out there, the training and the people you're around. How do you feel like your understanding of the knowledge and the discussion around fighting is for you now?
Well, for me, I think a lot of it's changed with just being a lot more intentional about it. And so, and also, so there's a combination of intentionality and just being, so before I'd hear, different ideas from one person or another at different places, largely at events, and then it'd be months till I heard something again. One of the things that this show has done, and I think also just being back, is it's the every week or twice a week, and being able to go back and review stuff, being able to, so for the Sunday drills, have the drills, and then because they were recorded, go back and look at something and say, I'm going to do that again. It's almost like a workout video. You can go back and do it again. And then the same thing with some of the shows is it gives you, because you're coming back to some of the same themes over and over, not necessarily the same show, but the same theme comes back again over and over again. And so being able to do that every week and have that kind of in-depth discussion every week is very different than once a quarter finally getting together with people and really talking about something. And I think that's a big change for me.
So Bess, I mean, it's kind of funny because I'm kind of holding you out there a little bit too, because in the past year and a half, right? About how long you've really been coming here? We went from the, I don't know what you guys are talking about in this, no thought, you think through fights, and I don't believe you, and this woo-woo stuff. And
still woo-woo.
But, how do you feel like your understanding of fighting has changed?
So my understanding of fighting, because I'd done the well, so I like to think that my understanding of fighting was fairly decent before. So I certainly have refined it. I had a pretty good basics. I like to think I had the basics down pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But it refined it for me, and being able to discuss concepts and to think about them and then discuss them afterwards, outside of, say, Coach's Corner, kind of helped solidify things. I know I kind of stalled, for lack of a better term, on fighting. And I was like, I don't know, frankly, I was like, I don't know why I'm going to practice anymore. I can't see an improvement. I can't see that I'm getting better. Something needs to change, but I don't know what it is. And I'd be like, I don't know what I need. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I need to change. And so hearing the conversations, the Sunday practices that we had, and having the conversations and listening here certainly made a difference to, it expanded my horizons, really. It gave me, I had maxed out where I was and didn't know how to proceed. And so that's really helped me. But also, I now watch fighting differently. So, we kind of started this with saying, you should watch fighting just to, if you're not a fighter, hang out and watch fighting and listen to fighters talk, and you'll absorb stuff. But now when I watch fighting, either in video or in person, I see things that I didn't see before, because of how we talk about them, because, we'll talk about, I don't know, shifting your weight or some woo-woo thing that actually made sense to me now. And so I find that it's the hanging out part of it, the talking about it with aspects that I never had before have made a significant difference to me. And I'm really glad, because like I say, I was stalling and I wasn't getting any better, and I kept getting frustrated about it.
Yeah, so I think tonight we're gonna go through an episode, and it's really based on a book I've brought up a number of times, and I tell everybody that it's something that is you want to listen to or read. I think I went through it the fifth time. I drive a bit back and forth to work, so I went through it again because it's a little bit kind of like Musashi's book, where there's always something in it that you're like, that makes total sense. I've seen that before. And, there's so much that they're putting at you. So the more you go through it, the more you can kind of associate with the things that are in it. And it's funny because I have a number of people that do the same thing. They're like, oh, I'm on my third time listening to that book, and it's, at the end of the book, they have a nice little layout that goes through a number of important things. And I was going through that layout, and I'm like, there's so many things there that we talked about, right? And tonight's show, and the book is Peak Performance. and I'll post it up in here. It's a wonderful book. Has great stuff. And to tell you the truth, the first time I read it, the first thing I thought was I needed to buy it for everybody at my work, because it's all about managing stress, really, in the end, and stopping burnout. And Tristan and I talked about that also in the beginning of the show. And when you're in a startup, man, you're just running 100 miles per hour, and it's like anything, you'll go until you're done, right? And you just didn't manage that. And this is not only about the physical side, but it's also about the mental side. One of the people that wrote the book was essentially created the Obamacare system, of how sometimes maybe he should have done that better in some cases, but he created the spreadsheets that figured out how that money had to work and how things had to work inside of it. And he worked 2 down from the president in the White House. He worked before that at a company that he burned 60 hours a week, 60, 80 hours a week. And all they did was stuff like this for large corporations. And he burned out too, shortly after, where he had a great career. Everybody thought he had a great career coming. And now he's writing books, and loving it. So I wanted to just go ahead, and I'm going to kind of just throw out some of these topics. There's a lot of depth in these, and I'm going to post these up later because I kind of added some things here and there. And the first thing I want to do is just, because it's going to take a while to get through this stuff, I'm going to just kind of skinny it down, and we're just going to talk about some of the stuff we talked under about these topics. So the first one, the title of it is, and there's a number of subchapters here kind of thing, but it's systematically grow by alternating between stress and rest. And it sounds weird. And, and I'm going to throw the first piece out there, and that is stress yourself. And so, it's interesting because, when we talk about stressing ourselves, the first thing we were like, oh, trying to get stress out of my life. I hate stress. Stress causes you to have heart attacks and high blood pressure. And well, it's funny because really part of life is stressing yourself to get better. If you don't stress yourself, then you don't incrementally improve. So, hey, if I run 100 feet one day and I want to get to that mile, well, then I'm going to run 110 feet the next day. And I'm going to put a little bit more each time on that.
Okay, let's just talk about that. If you run 100 feet and then you ride 110, that is a 10% increase. That's huge. And people sit there and go, oh, it's only 10 extra feet, but it's 10%. And I know that's a lot, because if they said, hey, Bess, would you like a 10% raise at work? I would be very happy. So I just have to jump in with.
No, that's why we're talking about this.
And I'm not sure if we want to get into it now, but the small incremental steps, people mock them. I'm in the gym a lot, and I see people, they want to immediately do, 5 miles and lift all the weights. And I'm like, or here's a 2-pound weight. Why don't we start with that and make sure your technique is right and make sure everything is good? And it's small incremental advances.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even notice really that you're getting better until suddenly you're like, well, holy crap, now I'm doing all this extra stuff. And it's like that here in the SCA. You're like, for newer fighters, like, okay, I can hold a shield up for 1 bout, and then I have to go rest. And then the next thing you know, it's 2 bouts and 3 bouts. And you're like, hey, eventually, after amount of time, my shield arm didn't get tired today at practice. But people always poo-poo those small amounts. And I know we were going to talk about small incremental steps later, so sorry I blew up.
No, and it's great. I mean, we're right there now, and I just wanted to point out that this is something that, the small goal thing is something that we point out in tons of our sessions, right, Tristan?
Well, yeah, it is, and in reflecting on it, I think we get so inundated with the drama and the epic media of storytelling that we want to have this very fast return on our investment. We get used to being told these stories of these epic heroes that start from nothing, and in an hour suddenly they're invincible, and we want that for ourselves. But while that makes a great story that somebody tells in a movie or in a TV show, and you expect that, it works differently in real life. There's a lot more investment that needs to be put in on a regular basis. And, we're drawn to the SCA for the tale of the epic hero. We all want to be that epic hero. And the hard part is accepting that epic hero takes a lot of work to get to that point of being as good as he or she is. And, I wish I had a nickel for every fighter that was disappointed that in 6 months they weren't ready to go win a crown, and just felt, well, I go to practice every week. Why am I not good by now? Like, well, just because with anything, it takes a while. And the two best analogies that I can think of, and I tell this to my martial arts students as well, is to say, you're learning a language. Yeah. You could not expect to learn a brand new foreign language and be fluent in it in 6 months' time. It just is not going to happen. You have to spend a great deal of time getting into learning that language and hearing it. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show. When you start to learn that language, you immerse yourself with fighters and the fighter culture, and you start to understand its language. You start to understand what's important to it. It still takes you a while to get fluent on top of the physical part of being able to speak the language, which is to be able to actually fight. And for those people that are impatient, I would advise them, savor the journey. Don't think of getting to your destination as much as enjoying the road of getting there. Because if you're not enjoying the road of getting there, I'll tell you that road is really long. If you're not enjoying it, it's going to grind on you every single time you go to do it or think about it. If you savor it and enjoy it, you'll want to go to the next practice, the next event. You'll look forward to getting in your armor again. You look forward to the opportunity, the joy of practicing and training and improving. When that is your program, you will keep going, and it won't feel like an effort. It won't feel like it's a burden that you're carrying. It will feel like it's a joy that you're just letting out and savoring. So that would be my advice for the spiritual side of how to build the mental and then the physical. So that's kind of the theme of the show, is this spirit, mental, physical. So that's how that plays into it.
Yeah, and those are all needed. I mean, that's the big part. And I'm going to throw this one at Sivrid, because he kind of did this, and this is cultivate a deep focus and perfect practice. So the idea is just going to practice isn't enough, but it is the first step, right? But if you go to practice, stand around and talk to others and don't pay attention, what do you get out of it? You get to say you went to practice, right? So Sivrid, I mean, this is the case, right? You started coming to our practices. I mean, you've been practices all over the place. You've been to lots of different groups. How do you feel about that?
I think that's a really good point. So we've talked to other occasions about things like, okay, what happens when you do PEL for 100 days and you don't practice it with good form? You're going to just teach yourself bad form. And so part of that's that practicing with perfect or focused practice and saying, okay, I'm actually going to pay attention. And one of the things that I really appreciated when I came back is that so early on, when we were still doing just the Sunday practices, I started off and I was trying to get. We were doing a bunch of rotational work around the PEL, and you gave me a hard time because my hands were in the wrong place, my arms were in the wrong place, and I could have practiced the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have ended up very far. I would have ended up, with, poor habits that yet another rut I have to get myself out of. And we talked about ruts before.
Carving in those ruts
by itself coming.
And they're so hard to get out of. And I think that perfect practice helps you avoid some of those ruts so that you don't have to fix them later.
Totally agree. And I think that rolls kind of, goes into, keeping focus, but also making sure that, even when you have focus, that you're not rushing through what you're doing. And that is like, take one step at a time. The idea is don't rush until, if you rush through something, you really never understand it. So you never understand that you did it wrong. And it may cause the next thing you do to be even harder. And then if that is not done, so you have to have the foundational piece first. I have to know how to really have to understand how to throw a good blow before I really even start walking and throwing good blows, or before I, do, the next piece of a fake and throw a good blow. And the idea is like, well, I'm just going to throw a blow, but this is all about fake. So I'm going to fake and throw a blow. Well, which one's good? Maybe neither. So the idea is, is remember to try to make sure that you're doing one thing at a time. Feel comfortable with the thing. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to keep working on it for the rest of your career. But it's easier to build when you have a strong foundation. I mean,
could I jump in with one too?
Yeah, because you do that. You have to do that, right, Tristan?
Well, yeah. And as you were talking, what occurred to me was that, and this I came into much more after I started teaching traditional martial arts. And that is, I really put into the focus of me teaching my students to troubleshoot their own technique. And this is something that I noticed a lot of martial art instructors do, and even a lot of SCA coaches do, or at least did, back when I was seeing a lot of them, is of course they would say, all right, what you're doing wrong. Here, do this. And they would leave the instruction at that. And a lot of times, whoever they were instructing was having a difficult time seeing what the problem is that they were doing. They just merely said, change this or change that. And it occurred to me that over time, because when I had students over time, which I still do, I realized they need me to provide the correction input. They don't see and troubleshoot their own technique and realize I'm doing it wrong when somebody else is not looking. Thus, they get the problem that Sivrid talked about, which is now they're doing a bunch of reps that are incorrect, but they don't know that they're wrong, and they don't know what they should be correcting. So I took it on myself to try training a slightly different way, where I start with those crucial fundamentals that need to be there and give them, okay, if you don't have a certain amount of power, it's because you're not using your legs, for example. Use your legs. If you're hitting something, you should be hitting something with your legs, not with your arms, not with your shoulders or your chest. So if for example, you're not hitting with power, check your stance and your footwork. And it should be going, then I can say doing it like this. So in taking on a different perspective from an instructor's standpoint or a coach's standpoint, to say, you should be able to spot when something's going wrong with your own technique. Then you should be able to troubleshoot what is going wrong, and you should have heard many times what you should be doing correctly to fix it. That will cut out the number of bad reps that you're doing, that you will be reinforcing something we have to undo later and have it do it correctly. And what I found was, in taking on that approach, it is very doable with students in the first 6 months even. It's not something you have to wait for years to start to teach students to spot when something's not going correctly, go back and audit what they're doing, and then have them check their posture, check their footwork, check their balance, check their power delivery. Like that's very doable. And they enjoy that part because it makes them their own coach to a certain degree. It's not that they're perfect necessarily, but they're not also, when an instructor's not standing over them, giving them instruction, they're not lost in the woods. That, at least I wanted to jump in with that because
no, that's good. I think Bess wanted to jump in too. I saw her jump in.
Yeah, because I'm excited about this, because I have been in the position in the last, over COVID, when we were doing, virtual practices of learning new stuff. And it was important to me that there was a technique and I wanted to learn how to do it right. Mm-hmm. And the number of times, like, I would be lagging behind the class because I could tell, I knew I wasn't doing the thing, everybody else was like, well, bippity boppity boo, look at me, I'm terrific at it. And I'd be like, oh, I suck at this. And I would just do the thing over and over again. And I was lucky enough that the people in the practices I was doing, they just smile and leave me alone and say, well, okay, Bess isn't going to keep up with it. But that's how I had to do it. If I went too quickly onto the next thing, that I just couldn't absorb it. So for me, I'm a learn slow but learn right kind of person. And I can assure you, and I think Brannos would attest, was probably one of the slowest learners in that group, but I'd like to think that I learned it right because I was just willing to say, I'm going to be the weird kid in the corner doing this over and over again. And I would practice, and this is particularly with footwork, but I would practice not just on the Sundays when we were practicing, but I have a mat here with a ladder duct taped down. And just, if I would walk into the room, I would just practice a step. You know, I also have one duct taped in my kitchen floor as well. So if I was waiting for like the kettle to boil, I could practice the thing just to make sure, not just once a week. And I think that's an important consideration as well. If you're learning something at practice and you want it to be right, it can't just be once a week at practice. You've got to, for me, I think about it. If I'm waiting for an elevator, oh, look at me, I'm throwing a snap. Hopefully no one's looking, but, or if I'm in the gym afterwards, I'm working on footwork. It's got to be more than just at practice. You learn it at practice, you learn what you're supposed to do, come back the next week to whoever your coach is and go and do the thing and ask, what do you think? Because there was just recently, there was one of the footwork things that I'd learned how to do. And I did it in practice. I'm like, well, this sucks. I knew I was executing what we had done right, but there was clearly something I was missing. And so I spoke to Ronvalder about it, and he says, oh yeah, bippity boppity boo, you just got to move your hips this way and then everything's fine. And he was right. So I shouldn't have sounded so surprised. And
Ronvalder was right.
Astonishingly, Ronvalder had the correct. Sorry, dude. But that's the kind of thing. So we talk about practice, but practice and do the thing. So, you practice on your Pel at home, then you've got to go to an environment where you can do it, not just practice at home. Go to a practice, execute what you've learned, and see. Because, like I say, I had learned this one thing perfectly, except when I executed it, I needed to modify it slightly. And so that I would really just practice, go, and then take it back the next week and talk to your coach about like the thing.
Yeah, and that's the small steps. Last piece, and I think this is the whole section is about, and that is nurturing growth or a challenging mindset. We talk about this all the time. It's like you have to just keep challenging yourself. You go to everything you go to. You don't go and say, well, I'm going to go win. No, that's everything you go to. That's your challenge. I'm going to win. Well, that's not growth, right? Growth is I'm going to go and I'm going to I'm going to block the first shot in every pass I have. I'm going to go through I'm going to try to beat 2 people today.
Actually, can I jump in on that for a second? So this is what Ronvalder talks about changing your victory conditions. I have had a couple of people ask me privately, what does that actually mean? So this is an example of changing your victory conditions. So rather than saying, I'm going to go to the practice and I'm going to be the king of the practice, I'm going to win everything. I'm going to block this shot. I'm going to block the first shot, or I'm going to do this one thing. All I need to do in this fight to be victorious, to me, is to do this one thing. Yeah, they might kill me, but I don't care about losing. I just want to do this one thing. That is changing your victory conditions. It would be like entering a marathon. If you think, oh, I'm going to run 26 miles, and you don't do it, you think, oh shit, I didn't achieve victory. But if you enter a marathon and you think, I'm going to go 2 miles, I'm going to get my bib and the free t-shirt and I'm going to drink the water. All I want to do, no, but because it's fun. You're like, I got all these people around me and it's all like psyche. And you're like, I'm just going to do 2 miles. If I do more, that's great. But my only goal is to do 2 miles. If you do 2 miles in the marathon, then you've won, even though you didn't do 26 miles. And that's, I think, Brannos, what you're referring to is changing victory conditions or changing what your focus is for that day.
And sometimes you end up even going past what you thought your victory conditions were. And in fact, you tend to relax after you get past that victory condition. And it's easier to move forward because now you believe. You believe in that you did. You're not just self-defeating yourself with conditions that you can't get to. You're like, I did it. Look at me. Let me pat myself on the back. Go get my token, get my pin and t-shirt, and
Bob's your uncle.
I had a great day. Next time I'm going to run 4 miles.
A couple of weeks ago, I was feeling like crap. I did not want to go to the gym. And I put this thing down my Facebook, like, a half-assed workout is still a workout, right, guys? Like, that's like, and I got all this encouragement. So I'm like, well, shit, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do this stupid elliptical. I'm not going to do the high levels, and I'm not going to go fast. I'm just going to do my time, and I'm going to go. So I walked in, like, expecting nothing of myself except that I was there in the gym. Honest to God, I set a personal record that day because I was relaxed, because I was just like, I gave myself permission to do nothing and to be cool with it. And that's, I think, you're talking about relaxing, Brannos, and I think that's something that we all need to do, not be so tense and so tight.
Yes, there's lots of reasons behind that.
Yeah, so I just want to say, like, give yourself permission to try something new, to work on something else, to do a little step, because honestly, you can. Did it again today. I was just going to go do a short workout before we got onto Coach's Corner. Yeah, I ended up not doing a short workout even one little bit, but it was just like, you give yourself permission to just do this. And as you say, Brannos, if you do, you do a little bit more, well then, wow, look at me, I'm super terrific. And that it does. It gives you the, I say courage, but the inspiration or the mental toughness to continue.
Yeah. And also you believe in yourself goes a long way. So let's jump on to the next kind of chapter here. And that is, part of this was rest. And here's the hard one. Have this in what they call is have the courage to rest. And it's like, why do I have to have courage to rest? Because many times people are afraid to say, I go to 2 or 3 practices a week. I'm going to take a day off. So this is in the high end sports. These guys are going every day, right? Over and over again. And to a point where that you overtrain and you burn out. So in the society, in ways, we can do that same thing because mentally we're not all into what we're doing in the society, but we are also spending a great deal of energy on work, on home life. And then we tried to, with that little space we have, we want to be all in at what we do in the SCA. So I'm not saying you have to rest from the SCA. I hate to saying you have to rest from everything sometimes for yourself. And, Bess just talked about it. And that is, when you go to the gym and you burn your muscles out and you tear them down, you don't, now some muscles recover fast enough, but some don't. You don't go to the next day, burn the same muscle, and the next day and burn the same muscle, and the next day burn the same muscle over and over and over again until it fails. You go home, you rest. Sometimes you take the next day, you work different muscles, and then the third day you work in the muscle again. The idea is muscles need rest. So does your head. I mean, if you're just constantly burning on, at work, let's say, with constant stress, and you're working 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week, how long do you think you can do that? It's tough. I mean, before you're ruining your life. So be aware of when you need rest. And an example of that is, it's interesting. Example of that is when you do have a lot of stress, take time out. Take 2 minutes out of your day to just go sit down, go grab, if you have to, go grab you a snack, go sit down outside, and don't think about work. Don't think about any of those things. Sit down and think about some good things that are in your life and things like that. And give yourself that 2 minutes. You'd be amazed how it changes you because it's resting your mind. And that same thing, if sometimes you're in a tournament and there's a lot of stress in tournaments. Sometimes you need to go just sit down and say, you know what? I'm here with all my friends trying to have fun. Give those positive words to yourself, because in the end, you'll go back to that list and you're like, you know what? I don't need all this stress. I'm here to have fun. And you'll start remembering the things you should be doing. So anybody have anything on that kind of idea of, you know, what other kinds of rest do you guys think about?
Yeah. So for me, a lot of it has really been, you know, the idea, okay, well, one of the things to balance is, okay, I want to go to all these events. And then every week there's an event and every week there's a tournament. So like I look at Louis' schedule and it's crazy, but you know, I look at some of the other schedules. It's like every single week for the last several weeks, it's like, okay, something. And 2 weekends ago, I just said, okay, I need to just take the weekend off and sleep. And my body recovered massively because of it. And so part of that is the idea of, okay, it's okay to give yourself a week time off to take some downtime to sleep. And I think that's one of the big things, or recover, whatever that happens to be. I think that is a really important thing. And I think the other one is that sometimes we like to say, well, we're going to rest. And so rest means, okay, I'm going to do a leg day instead. No, rest really means rest. And I think that's something we have a hard time with, is the idea that, well, you know, because we always keep saying, well, if I'm not doing something actively towards my goal, I'm not getting anywhere. But sometimes that rest is doing something actively towards your goal. and we don't give ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that you look at any sports training manual, they're like, well, rest really means take your heart rate and go down and don't go above, you know, whatever percentage of your heart rate. And that's, if you've ever tried that, it is hard. You end up walking, you know, you don't run.
I'm just going to post this one up here because nailed it. In this country, rest is lazy. And they talk about that in this book exactly. And that in this country, people view, if you rest, that you're not working. Somebody else is working harder than you. So, you know, you're falling back right away. And I'm going to tell you, they talk about in this book is these top champions. Rest is as important as it is to practice, and finding those times to do it right, finding good, whatever amount of time. There's ways to measure this, but you know, your 8 hours of sleep, your, you know, and how to build that space. And some of them did meditation, some of them did massage therapy, some of them did all kinds. There's any way. We can't tell you exactly how to get that rest. What we can tell you is that you need that rest, and to find a thing that works for you. Some people actually only need 7 hours a day, and that's rest for them.
I would add to that, and not beat yourself up mentally as you're not doing the thing.
That's the hard one. Yeah.
So if you're, you know, if today is a rest day or whatever, it could be a mental rest day, it could be a physical rest day. But if you're beating yourself up, like, you know, I just need to chill. I just need to sit on the sofa and I'm going to watch The Good Doctor or whatever it is, a marathon, whatever you like. You don't beat yourself up because you're not doing the laundry or mowing the lawn or, you know, shoveling the snow that's coming down. You give yourself permission to say, I'm just being quiet. We got a comment about meditation. Frankly, I cannot meditate. It is kind of woo-woo for me. But I have lots of friends that love it. But where I talk about being in the gym a lot, because for me, the gym is kind of relaxing in that I'm focused on the right here and the right now, which is what I think meditation is. Yeah. Mostly the right here and right now is, Jesus, I hope I can go for another 15 seconds. But it's right here, it's right now. I'm not worried about work or what the dogs are doing, or am I not doing something? I really, really enjoy the gym because it's a mental break. There's no talk about insurance. There's no talk about SCA. I don't worry what the dogs are eating or chewing or pooping on. It's just right here, right now. And I would encourage everybody to find the thing that they can do to give themselves a mental break. Maybe it's knitting, you know, you just like the idea of knitting. Maybe it's making garb because, you know, when you're cutting expensive fabric, you are focused on the right here and the right now, that type of thing. So I would really encourage everybody, you know, if meditation isn't your thing, find something and it will really help. And, you know, the lazy here in this country, if you're not doing, you're being lazy. And sometimes fighters will do that to other fighters. Oh,
Yeah.
you skipped the event this weekend, right? Oh, I guess it wasn't that important to you. And you know what? Call people on that, because what we're doing is we're almost creating a if you're not practicing, then you suck mentality. So then you're like, well, I don't want to suck. And especially if you're an unbelt and a knight happens to make a goofy kind of comment like that, then you're like, ooh, maybe I got to get back into practice, even though you really, really need the downtime.
Yeah, and the way to
I'd like to
communicate.
add one thing here too,
Go
and
ahead.
that is that, and this comes to the point of burnout that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And of all the fighters that I've seen, or people that say they want to fight or just kind of start and dabble a little bit, I will have to say there's many more that don't do enough, more than there are ones that do too much. Now, granted, there are both of them, and the burnout tends to be for those people that perhaps they don't know how to make whatever they do with their endeavor, their training, sustainable. They come in, they gangbusters, they want to go crazy. Every waking moment is doing push-ups or doing physical or rappel work or doing something, because those are the people that burn out. They manage that for about 3 weeks, and then they go, oh my God, I can't handle this. I can't take it, and I quit. On the other end of the spectrum is the person who says, I'm so busy, I can maybe go to one practice a month, or maybe one practice every month and a half. And they do that for 6 months. And then they say, why am I not getting any better? To which the answer is, if you were learning, say, Japanese language or learning to play the guitar, and you only picked it up once every month and a half, how good would you expect to be after 6 months? Now, if you balance the overdoing it versus underdoing it, you're going to make more progress overdoing it than underdoing it. But if you burn out and stop, the person who's underdoing it in a year and a half is going to go farther than the person who overdid it, burned out, and doesn't want to do it anymore.
Exactly.
The sweet spot is in the middle, where somebody can realize, here's what I can fit into my weekly or monthly schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick to it, and I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to get burned out and upset because I'm going too much. And I'm not going to beat myself up for not progressing fast enough. I'm going to manage my expectations for how much time I can spend on this while keeping a good family life, keeping my job, keeping my life in order. And there, I'm going to adjust my expectation for what I'm doing. But they keep going. And that to me is the key to success, is you don't quit. And some people can have a more rigorous schedule than others. That's just because what their life is, what their mentality is, what their passion is. And there's one thing that I would caution people for, and I've seen many people run into this wall. They see fighting and they want to be a great fighter. They want to be part of that community and the camaraderie, but they really don't like fighting. But they make themselves do it because they like the people. They want to be part of the team. They want to be part of that group. It's okay to like the social aspect, but don't force yourself to become a fighter if you don't like it just because you want to participate. There are ways to participate and be part of that community without forcing yourself into doing something your body doesn't want you to do. Your mind doesn't want you to do it. It's not what you are. And I've heard the same thing hold true of people that, for example, smoke, and then they're convinced they need to stop. Their doctor harps on them, their family's harping on them, and they come to just realize, I'm a smoker. That's just what I am. It's what I'm going to be. You have to know yourself, and this is where Sun Tzu's know yourself part comes in, with know yourself and know your enemy thing. Know what you are, and if enjoying fighting is something that feeds your soul, then do it, but figure out a way to do it where you're not burning out and you're not wallowing in no progress, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the things you just talked about are parts that actually we're going to cover even a little bit more in detail. And you can see kind of how they all fit together. And that's the part of what we're trying to give you here when we're having these sessions and we talk about individual pieces. We talk about need for speed, and we talk about footwork, and we talk about mentality, and we talk about all of these things separately, but they all fit together. And this is what you're seeing in this episode a little bit, is how some of these things fit together. Tristan just covered the next three chapters of the book, right? Yeah, and no, I like it. I think it's a good example. And why they did this book is because these things fit together, and it takes time. It's no different than the chain of power, or the kinetic chain. Those things fit together. Sometimes there are parts of it that you don't get right away, and you're a little off. But as you do it more and more, and it gets more and more comfortable, that chain essentially goes from toe to hand, and you have that power that you're looking for. And this is the same thing in development of a person. We're teaching you, we're trying to give you ideas, and we're trying to help you. We're not going to put it together for you, because every person is different. You're going to bring in these pieces and understanding to create, hopefully, the person that you want to be. And I think that's why we're trying to do this. And this is also the reason really why I wanted this episode after going through this. So we're going to just move on here to the next one. And and I'm just going to say one of these things talks about taking extended time off. We've seen this. I've seen people kind of get to the edge of burnout, and they take a couple weeks off, and then they come back and they have this positive mindset because they want to be back. And all of a sudden they fight better. It's like, how in the hell did that happen? Right. And I think that's one of those big things. All right. Who highlighted that? Is that you, Sivrid? Oh, you're on mute.
Muted.
Are you on mute, buddy?
Yeah,
He's
it's
gonna
that
let-
line thing. Yeah. There we
there
go.
you go.
So yeah, Vim's comment, which was, he loves pill work, but if you go stale after a while.
Yeah.
And so, if you take a break, you come back, maybe 6 months, maybe 2 months, whatever, you take time, come back to it. And all of a sudden, then you get that advantage of it again. It's not that it was something that you shouldn't be doing. It's something that had gained what you could gain from it for that time being. And then you come back to it again later, and you can gain from it again.
Exactly. All right. So next one, we're going to talk about priming for performance. And some of this is later in a couple of these chapters under priming for performance. It actually, you just nailed some of these, Tristan, and around how these things come together. But first piece is, and everybody kind of knows this, and that is develop a warm-up routine, right? Important activities essentially to start your anything that you want to do good. It could be practice, it could be a tournament or whatever you want. The idea is to develop a sequence of activities that get you into that mindset. So, that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's just call it out. Like Tristan, when you'd go to your martial art practice to get into that point where you're like ready to teach, ready to do your thing, you just got done with work, and all of that is different than stepping into the dojo. Of course, you've been doing this long enough. Stepping into the dojo could be that routine, right?
And it is. And the routine actually I learned was in the SCA, and that routine was getting my armor on.
Yeah.
That was my ritual. When I was putting my armor on, I'd always store my armor in my bag the exact same way. It would always come out the exact same way. I'd always put it on the exact same way. It was a habit that got me in. And the thing that really flipped the switch was sliding the helm on. That switches are on, it's go time when that thing goes. And it's weird even now when I pull it out and I haven't, put it on in some time. When I slide that helmet on, something happens. I still can't quite describe it, but it means all the bullshit's put aside, and now it's focus on the one thing I need to do.
Yep. The world's empty around you. Everything is there now.
And that transitions into like when I go and start a class. And I never pre-plan what I'm going to teach in a class because I don't know who's going to be there.
Right.
But once I see the bodies that are there, my mind goes, click, click, click. All right, where are they at? I will kind of go through each one. Like, what do each one need? What can I put together that will suit them? And I can do that in a span of 10, 15 seconds. Yep. So I don't need a half an hour.
Because you have a clear mind.
It's a clear mind on exactly what's going to focus. But I do the same thing at the beginning of a class where we go through a limited number of like calisthenic body warm-ups, a little bit of stretch, then into movement exercises. And the movements are refined for all the movements we use all the time in technique. just to get the body pattern into how it should be moving, shifting, stepping. And it's only, 10, 15 minutes, but it's establishing the pattern. And then we go and start to execute when it's learning technique.
Setting up that routine so others can start learning that routine. I think that's
Absolutely.
important. Sivrid, what do you do?
So some of what I do is it's similar to Tristan. It's getting the armor on. I find that if I don't at least put something on, whether it's changing clothes into something that's workout clothes or something, that's part of the trigger. Because otherwise, I'm like, oh, I'm still in just sit around and talk mode. If I still have my street clothes on, I'm in sit around and talk mode, and I will bullshit all night, and that doesn't get me anywhere. So that's one of the things. The other one that I found is if I really want to know that if I'm focused on trying to do specific things as opposed to just going out and fighting that evening, which is, I try to focus on specific things. I find that just the discipline of doing some of the footwork drills at the beginning sets my mind into the motion of, okay, I'm now in the motion of I'm making progress on specific things, not just going out to spar and see how everything fits together. So for me, that gives me the time to reflect, come up with my list of, these are the 3 things that I really want to work on in training tonight. This is what I want to do to get to there. And sometimes that then follows with a training drill that I focus on one of them. And sometimes it's working on those in open sparring.
Bess.
So some of you may know that I had rotator cuff surgery and bicep surgery. So as I'm pulling on my armor, the armor goes on, but before it's on all the way, usually it's just my legs that are on. I start just moving my arm and stretching my arm and just making sure that it's good to go. Just to make sure the arm isn't going to be shocked by doing fast work. But one of the things I like to do is slow work. So I get on the field and I'll just warm up doing slow work. It's important that when your muscles are cold, if you just stretch them, you can hurt them a little bit. But if your body is warmed up, it's easier to do slow work or to do stretches. So I'll do slow work. And as I'm doing slow work, I'll make big motions just to make sure that my whole body is involved in moving. And I find that helps me as I'm doing the slow work to sort of focus on the fighting. That's what I'm here for. Because I have to admit that, if you're not in armor or on the field, you end up talking. And especially if there's only a few people at practice, say you've got 4 people at practice and you're like, are we going to fight? Are we not going to fight? There's always that 4 isn't very many. Or if sometimes I've been at practices with 3 and you're like, all it takes is one person to put on their armor and a practice happens. It's like, and suddenly a practice broke out. So very much is putting on my armor, doing my stretches, doing some slow work. I enjoy that. I do the gabbing. I'm not going to lie. It may not shock you to know that I'm a bit of a chatterbox at practice.
What?
I know, right? Who could have expected that? But one of the things I also do now that I've learned here on Coach's Corner to help make our practice a friendlier place is, like I used to, I go, I put on my armor, I do my stuff, and I get on the field. I make a point of saying hi to everybody. And if there's somebody newer, I welcome them to practice. We've had some new people. Just, hey, how can I help you? And part of me kind of dies inside because I'm not going to get around to fighting. But it's important that we welcome people to our practices and make them feel comfortable. And so I have taken that on myself to make a point of saying hello to everybody. If there's somebody new, saying thank you for coming to our practice. I appreciate you coming out. It's a long drive. You didn't have to choose this practice.
Well, remember that conversation because actually that one's a big one at the end. So
okay, well then I'm just gonna
like that. Everything linking together again. So that's
such a great audience.
Here's another one, and the idea of optimizing your routine is remember the impact of your mood at practice. So you can be in a crap mood and come, you can be in a great mood and come to practice. The one thing that will destroy your practice is negativity. Good mood, bad mood, I don't care what mood you're in. Negativity will destroy not only your practice, but somebody else's. And that negativity sits in you, and it's hard to get past. So be careful, and I can't tell you, I can't stress this one enough. And I struggle with depression and all of those things. I can be incredibly painful to myself, negative about the things I do. But when you go to practice, you got to let that go and look and try to be positive. And I would tell you, try to be positive, and almost your life will make your life better. Bruce Lee, I'm going to just give you a quote from Bruce Lee. By the way, next week, I think we're going to cover a book on Bruce Lee, right, Tristan?
Yep. The Tao Jeet Kune Do. We're going to have a discussion about that book.
Yep. So he says, don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy and they cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself and you'll change your life. And I can't tell you how much the truth that is. So keep that in mind. Think positive, and you'll do positive things.
And I want to add a tangible thing to that, because and not depending on who's listening to this, maybe they've got a big practice and maybe they've got smaller practices. But I remember for ours, we had, at any practice that I went to, there were enough fighters where I would be able to get a fight with everybody that was there. And for each one, and you could call this maybe some goal setting, I'd say, okay, I know this person pretty good, and here's what I want out of my sparring with them. And this is where I would change that goal. I'd do that goal setting part. I want to make sure that they're not taking my leg, or I want to face their strongest thing and not get defeated by it. Or I want to succeed with them where I want to be able to feint them, because they're really good at not falling for feints. So that's what I want out of that person. But on the other hand, you can have somebody that's like, well, they're newer, they're not going to challenge me. Instead, you turn that around and say, all right, when I work with them, what am I going to do for them? Well, how am I going to devote my time and help them along? But I'm going to make that a positive interaction. I'm going to make every single fight that I have is either going to help me train myself, help me train them, or optimally both. So you take, by doing that, it's a tangible way of taking that negativity and say, oh, I'm going to waste 5 minutes on this person that's not going to challenge me. And now that's you channeling your negativity into the practice, is exactly what Brannos was talking about.
Yep.
Or, oh, great, I get this Duke and he kicks my ass every single time, and I'm going to
negativity again,
beat for the next 10 minutes. And I'm going to be, take that around and say, no, I'm going to take a piece out of his hide. I'm going to figure out how to do it.
I'm going to block a blow. I'm going
to last for several minutes. I'm going to block 3 blows before, or something, anything, use movement. All of these things are ways to channel the positive side, instead of letting the negativity that maybe you acquired during your day or during your week, and letting it spill out into practice.
And that sounds kind of hippy dippy and all that stuff. But the reality is, why do you want to, you can focus on stuff that's working, whether it's good or not, it's working, or you can focus on the crap. But I'm like, why would I want to focus on all the awfulness in my life? In this case, I got hit in the head and I didn't block that and I didn't move right and I got killed. How does that make practice fun even for you if you're focusing on all the negative? The reality is, this is our hobby and we're supposed to be liking it. Why would you keep going to something when you're just focusing on how terrible you are and how terrible it makes you feel? Don't do that. Don't make yourself feel terrible. And, some people will say to me, well, Bess, I'm just trying to be realistic. Okay, well, you can be realistic about the good stuff. I'm realistic. I am not very good at blocking leg shots, but I'm really good about doing this. Or I'm not very good about it, but I blocked some tonight. And when I block them right. So you can acknowledge something, but then also acknowledge the truth of it. You can't just say the truth is I'm bad at this, because you're not. Nobody is ever bad at everything 100%. We would be dead. Oh, I'm really bad at breathing. So really, if you're doing something that brings you joy, let the joy come into you. Wow.
You are preach it.
Oh crap! And I just sounded about as woo-woo as anything.
I know.
Sorry,
You
I
should
just
write a
thought
book.
woo-woo. But really, I do. I really do believe in focusing on the things that bring you joy instead of the negativity. It's okay to be realistic. I didn't block as many leg shots as I wanted, and I didn't perform as I didn't do the block or the thing the way I wanted to, but I tried it. There's always something you're doing right.
100%.
I'd like to add on to this too, and that is something I'm sure every single one of us has experienced, and that is you're having a bad night. What you know how to do ain't happening, and you're what you're trying to do is not working. Take a look at this as happening as a good thing to happen at a practice, because it's going to happen in a tournament. When you got to change your attitude instantly, as quickly as you can, and get that garbage cleared out, go back to what you know how to do and execute. Like, that's what the practice is for. When you have a bad night, don't say, you know what, I'm packing my stuff up and I'm going home.
Quitting. Yeah.
I'm quitting, because that's what you'll train yourself to do when you run into that. I'm having a bad day, I guess I'm just done. Instead, think, all right, right now is when I have to change this around. I'm changing my mindset. I'm changing how I execute. If you need to go off and breathe for 5 minutes and calm yourself or regain your focus, that's where you learn how to do it. That's where you practice it, because it's going to happen at a war, at a tournament, sometime when it matters. That's when you're going to need to kind of get your stuff together. So use that opportunity.
And it's funny because I'm just going to point a real quick idea on this one. Is like, so the guy that goes into third round of a boxing match is losing. We might as well just end the boxing match if he's not going to change his game. And this is what Tristan's talking about. You have to learn to reevaluate and change based on what is being presented. And that's what practice helps with. That's what all of this stuff we're talking about helps with. And that's a real big piece. So you're still winning. You may not execute right, but you know what? You went to practice. That's positive. So
I'll have nights like, you know how it is, like armor doesn't fit. No matter what you do, it just doesn't fit right. Like, and it moves and I just go, oh, apparently tonight I'm practicing fighting with armor that doesn't fit.
There you go.
Doesn't work. And because as Tristan says, it's going to happen. It will happen. So practice learning how to deal with it. I'm not always good about changing my mental mindset. Okay. But I can say, okay, this is what I do when nothing feels like it's working. And then it helps me when I'm at a tourney. I'm like, oh, I've been here before. I've been at the place, where my knees are kicking in or just nothing feels right. And you're like, okay, at least mentally I've been in this place before and I know how to deal with it.
All right. And there's the last piece. I'm going to show this one up on the screen. And this is from Barry, one of our coaches. Sustainability and consistency. And really, consistency is key here. You just have to be consistent. It doesn't mean, when they talk about consistency, it's like going to practice consistently. No, it's consistent about what you're doing, consistently trying to learn, consistently trying to get that one thing right, consistency about doing these things. And over time, maybe, look how long it took me to become to become a good fighter. 35 years, still working on it. So, it's consistent.
Wait, you made it? Because it's 35
No. In fact, there's a lot of shit going the other way now. All right. So we're going to move on to design your day. This one was a little bit hard for me, but in the book, they really cover this. And this is more on, some of this is a lot on mental mindset of, and again, we're in the part where we're, priming for performance. And one of the pieces, the first big piece is, what they call it is become a minimalist,
Minimalist.
Thank you. To be a maximalist, right? And it's weird. What the hell does that mean, right? And in fighting, actually, we talk about that all the time, right? The smaller you get, the less you have to think, the less you have to do, get you the maximum performance sometimes. Mm-hmm. And some of this in the way they show it and they talk about it in the book is they talk about some of the some of the huge tech people that they wear essentially a turtleneck and a pair of blue jeans and the same pair of shoes every day. I mean, it's so bad that people here's $1 billion guy, and they're like, do you own 2 pairs of those shoes and shirts? He's like, I own 50 pairs of these shoes and shirts, and I never have to think about what I'm going to put on, because I rather think about how I'm going to serve 1 billion people on my site than have to waste energy thinking about matching my clothes. I rather be able to get up, walk to my room, and start working than get in my car, drive an hour in stress, use all that mental energy before I even started my day at work. Be a minimalist. And some of that also means, and this is Tristan, you covered this one. It's like you were talking about finding, making the best effort of that time, right? It's like take that time and use it the right way. And some of that is don't fill that time with other stuff. Because no matter what, if you have so much other stuff, that other stuff takes time, it takes energy, takes mental energy. And then, the things you really love doing, you're not doing anymore. I just had this conversation the other day, and I started doing things like fencing and doing every activity I could in the SCA. At the end, I wasn't having fun anymore. Individually, each one of those activities is a wonderful time. Together, I hated it. So I was like, you know what? Here's all my shit. I'm going to go do the thing I really love so I can find what I love in the SCA, and that was fight. I don't care about all the political bullshit. I don't care about, and yes, we should all care somewhat about it, but if you're invested so much and remember, every piece you invest somewhere else, you're taking out of something else. So that's what they're talking about here.
And also realize when you're spending time chasing the laser dot, you're just wasting your time by things that and there's life was like that. It'll throw stuff at you that will urge you to go and spend time in it, but will get you really no result, or at least no result you're interested in. And sometimes you just spin your wheels and you can get nowhere. Just realize, all right, am I spending my time well? And I also wanted to add judo's maxima, which is minimal effort, maximum effect.
That's correct.
And that includes not just technique, but how you spend your time, how you spend it in training. You want to get the most out of the least. Like that's efficiency.
Yeah, I don't want to half-ass 18 or 19 things, but seriously, like I'm the kind of person who likes to be able to focus on something. I was feeling I really like natural dyes and dyeing. I have friends that do that, and I was like, gosh, I really got to get into this and I got to do it. But then I realized mostly I like it when they do it and I can look at it, and then I stop feeling guilty that I wasn't doing it. I'm like, I'm going to enjoy it the way I enjoy it, not the way I think I ought to be enjoying it, which is like growing the flax and picking the berries and mushing them up and turning them into everything. I'm going to enjoy it the easy way, the minimalist way. My friends will do something awesome, or I can follow somebody on Twitter, and I'm going to enjoy it that way. I really like embroidery, and I got this great project in my mind. I've had it for like 20 years. I have accepted I'm probably not going to do it, but that's okay. I can just enjoy embroidery, but I don't have to do it. And I kind of let that guilt from that project that I have not done for 20 years kind of fall by the wayside and go, not going to do it. I'm not going to beat myself up for it. And I think that Brannos ties in with the minimalist. Apparently we all can't say that word.
Exactly. Tristan can.
With the mini stuff that we're supposed to be doing.
Minimalist.
There we go. Sivrid.
There it is.
Can you cover the next one? Essentially the surround yourself wisely.
You're muted.
I keep doing that to cut down background noise and, and cut down myself too. Thinking about who you're surrounding yourself by is a really important thing, because when you are around people who are doing the same thing, go in the same direction you are, it makes it so much easier to be working towards that direction, being part of a group. So when you think about it, if you go decide I'm going to have a big group that's all together, or even a small group. So Bess, you were part of the the group that was doing Sunday video practice. And it's amazing just the fact that we all knew, Sunday at 1, everyone is going to be there, and I'm going to be part of that, or I'm going to miss out. And so that idea of committing to doing something with other people makes a big difference. And then, but also getting back, that ties back into that same positive attitude we were talking about before, is if you surround yourself with people who have a positive attitude, that's infectious. And so you start getting back into a more positive attitude yourself. But on the other hand, if you surround yourself with people with negative attitude, you just all chase that down, and that ends up dragging you down instead of bringing you up. So having that group together, that we were all working together, and that, so we messed up footwork, and we all messed up together, laughed and said, okay, let's try it again and get it right. And having that positive reinforcement and having a positive attitude, and no one was complaining that they had to do footwork. Everyone was there because they wanted to make progress. And so that group effort to say, okay, I'm going to do this, and then introduce a new topic each week or each time, and then slowly getting through that, I think that made it so much easier. And the other part I'll add to this is, so one of the things that's been great about coming back to fighting is I've been able to do this with my son. And so being able to go places and saying, okay, I'm going to drive an hour with my son up to fighter practice. And all of a sudden, it's not an hour of drudgery to go to fighter practice. It's an hour I get to talk to my son, and we have fun talking about stuff or going back. I find out what's going on, and it's a chance to share, which we didn't have before. And so for me, that's an additional bonus for the whole thing. And so it makes it worthwhile, even if I don't really feel like going to practice today, but hey, I made a commitment. William's coming over. He's ready to go up. I guess we're going. And that makes a big difference. And again, that comes back to balancing rest versus going. But at the same time, it's also knowing that that's a push in the right direction, saying, okay, I'm going to go do this.
Yep, I agree. I'm just going to throw a couple of things that we've talked about in a lot of episodes that really fit this. And that is, remember the Fighter Buddy episode? That fits this one. We talk about coaching and coaches all the time. We talk about trainers. We talk about friends that support you in or out of armor, right? Those people that can watch you and pull you back into your game when you need it. I mean, those are the things you want to surround yourself with, and surrounding yourself with a positive person goes a really, really long way. So, last piece
to address that too, you may wind up with somebody who you may even idolize, and you say, I love everything they are, and I want to be everything that person is. And that's cool if that happens, but also beware that everybody has faults, and more than likely you will probably be in a group of people who you admire a number of them, and you won't be able to use any single one as your avatar, but you can take qualities that each have and absorb them into what you are, and that will be, whether it's purely from a fighting standpoint, or even their character, their work discipline, their work ethic, things like that. These are inspirations. We inspire each other when we get together, and so use that to enrich yourself. When you find somebody that has a quality you admire, like I want to do what they do. Like that's the great benefit of being in a group like that, that nurtures each other and inspires one another.
All right, let's go into harness the power of purpose. That sounds definitely goal-oriented business scenario here. It is a little bit, and it's kind of funny because a lot of this you would take it as like the woo-woo piece of this piece, but in the end, it's funny because both Bess and Tristan talked about that and here's one of them: transcend yourself. What does that mean? It means overcome your ego. And some of that is your ego is what stops you. It's like, well, I suck tonight, I'm leaving. Or, I can't do this, I quit. Get past that, push through that. It's easy to quit.
Mhm.
It's hard to get past your ego, because your ego is going to hold you back. And it's just a protected mechanism, and that's, and we can understand that we don't want to lose. We don't want to fail. But you know what? We keep talking about that. We keep saying failing is learning, right?
Mhm.
I
And
always say,
it's a precarious balance, because on one hand, our ego drives us, but on the other hand, it also can destroy us.
Yep.
It's like playing with fire. Fire is a great tool, but it can kill you. So it has to be wielded correctly.
Yeah. Bess?
I know when I get pissed off at myself and mad at myself and I want to quit, I'm like, screw you, me. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going.
Self-talk. They talk about that. I wasn't going to bring it up in this episode, but the self-talk thing is a huge part of pushing through some of these things. So, and the next one in kind of a bullet point here is focus on self-transcending purpose. In other words, the thing you talked about, Tristan and Bess, you talked about it as well. It's like, well, don't look at that negative of training some new person or not getting to fight today for an extra 15 minutes because you're helping somebody else. Because you know what? It's good to get past that place of giving back. Because if you find joy in that, if you find joy in helping somebody else, it only brings joy to what you want to do. And sometimes you literally have to break out and say, I'm not finding joy in this anymore. So you step back and you look and you find somebody else's joy in it, and you remember your joy.
Mm-hmm.
Super important, because we all see the ugly parts. The longer you get into this, the farther you get into this, we all see ugly parts. We see people cheat. We think that we're never going to do what they do. We see people abuse their power. We see people do all kinds of terrible things. But in the end, and at some point you get discouraged until you bring that next person in who wants to do something they've never done in their life. And they want to try to be good at something. And you help them on their first step, or you help them get past something, or you teach them something. And all those other things go away. Because it's about what you really want to do, right? And you guys we talked about that, right?
Yeah.
And that's transcending yourself. And it's interesting because they talk about this, and if you like it or not, they talk about this with all great athletes. You'll notice that it's not like, I was great today and I set a world record. No, it's by far not there. It's like, hey, I won the Boston Marathon because last year a bunch of people died out here, and I wrote them on my shirts, and I ran the Boston Marathon. I was the first U.S. runner to win a Boston Marathon for a very long time. Wow. Why? Because it wasn't about him running the marathon. It was something greater. Every boxer who walks up, he's like, thank God. It's like, because it's something greater. It wasn't him that did it. It was his belief that did it. Because when you limit yourself to what you believe you can do, you're literally putting a limit on yourself. So that's what they talk about in that transcendence. Next one, enhance your motivation. Essentially to increase your motivation. How do we do that? How do we increase our motivation? To go to practice, to see, to believe that we're going to win and that we're doing better. How do we, what kind of tools do you? Well, I mean, Tristan, what kind of tool, if you're like, hey, I'm a little undermotivated now, what do you do to kind of get motivated again? Outside, help others and do that piece.
Well, to me, it's having to examine yourself and really pin down and find out what exactly brings you joy.
Yeah, you're
nailing it. A lot of people have not done that work and found out, what is it that makes you really excited, that you get that your grin, and you're having what does it take to get that joy out of you? And, of all the times, I've seen people that they love big melee, like they just can't wait to get that. That's what gets them jonesing, is to get into that huge melee. They love that part. Others, they like to compete in a tournament. Others just love to go out and have the thrill of fighting. Others, like, I can just say for me personally, I like seeing doing something and succeeding where I didn't succeed before. Like, that's one of the things that really I enjoy myself, and at least initially. And then I found out later, I really like sharing that same experience with others, like sponsoring that with other people, helping them with that joy of doing what they didn't even realize they could do. And once you pin down exactly what that is, now you can form what it is you need to do to get that. But if you don't know yourself to know what really gives you joy, now you're kind of just throwing darts at the wall, hoping to hit a target. That's about the one thing I can recommend for it is, and it's different for different people. So,
it's interesting, Tristan, because, and I thought nobody's going to want to listen to it here, but in the book, they spend a great deal of time talking about write the things down you love and then rate them, so that, and then write something about them. It's literally understand what you really love about that.
Because and that's just tangible ways of self-analysis.
That's correct. And how often does anybody really do that?
Right.
And we don't even talk about that much here on Coach's Corner. But here it is. I mean, it's really something, and it's probably something we could probably spend a little more time on in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something we kind of talk about when we talk about, setting, reasonable goals or setting victory conditions.
Yes.
It's the same kind of thing. It comes back to that same thing. Is because, again, it's back to what brings you joy. And in this case, it's achieving a condition that you've set for yourself. And so some of that same kind of thing, it's the victory condition, or for me, sometimes I have this technique that I finally got to work, or I finally got and actually blocked that shot. And so sometimes it's that level of that brings me joy. And sometimes it's more but I agree that if you don't think about why you're doing something or what gives you the motivation to do it, it's hard to keep enhancing it. So you can't keep saying, okay, I'm going to make this more important, because if I don't know it's just random.
Yep.
And if it happens by luck.
Yeah.
So once again, I'm different.
That's all right.
So I know I like fighting. I know fighting makes me happy. I know hanging with my friends makes me happy. That's all great. But the question is, how do I keep motivation going? And sometimes it's just mental discipline. I feel, I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm going. When I was going to practice in the past and I felt like I'd hit a wall, I didn't just stop. I just kept going. And sometimes you say, I just have to go to practice. I just have to do it. Because it's not, unless you decide you hate it and you're just going to quit. Sometimes it's just like with my workout, I just want to half-ass it. I'm tired. I just don't want to go tonight. I just want to sit home on the sofa and cuddle with my puppies. But I get up and I go to practice and I do it, because I know that that's what I need to do, is to just go. And sometimes it's just a slog. I just go and I'm just going to go and do it. When I was in the gym once, I saw a motivational poster, which is actually the best thing I ever saw in my life. Nobody ever regrets going to practice. So even if you go to practice, even if it's a crappy practice, you were there and you did it. And so nobody ever regrets going to practice. It kind of really spoke to me. And I hold on to that. And at times my brain kind of drags my body along.
No, and that rolls back into a previous subject, and that is just show up.
Yeah.
There's no replacing showing up, right? And sometimes you realize that just showing up is what you needed.
And you know what? To add to that, everybody says, I'm going to go and I'm going to give 100%. 100% isn't going to be the same every day. If I'm really tired and I don't, or something is wrong, if I'm there and I'm giving as much as I've got on that day, that's 100%. On the days where I've had a good sleep and I've had a great meal and work is terrific and I'm not stressed and nothing hurts, 100% might mean something different. But going and giving 100%, even if the 100% isn't the same every day, it is an important thing to do as well.
Yeah, and they talk about that, about that, and a lot of people say you can't give 100% at every practice, and this is where rest also comes in place. And what they showed is top champions, they went to Sweden or Finland or something. They were watching these champion, long distance skiers, and they're like, why are they walking up the hills? He was like, because today isn't a hard workout day. And then they go and they're like, they're going to watch some long distance runners, and they're like, why aren't they running faster? Because today isn't 100% day. Maybe tomorrow is, or maybe next week is. So they rotate.
100% of 50%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Today is an easy day, so right. I'm going to give 100% of easy.
Yeah.
Or I'm, if today is a walking day, I will give 100% walking, and that's okay.
That's okay. All right, let's jump to the last one, and really, I think Tristan, you kind of covered this one. Is give back to avoid burnout. And I think we've talked about that a number of times. And I posted up something last week, even before we were talking about doing this episode. I posted up something that said, student says to the master, I'm very discouraged. What should I do? And the master says, encourage others. Mm-hmm. Right? And sometimes that's what you need to encourage yourself.
Yep. And one thing too, and this is, I guess, goes back to the negativity thing, is you're perhaps in a negative frame of mind and you're thinking, well, there's nobody here that's going to challenge me. I can't get anything out of practice. Well, I guess I should go help other people. If that's the mindset, that's, again, a negative way of approaching it. Yeah. What I will say, not only have I personally, how would I put this? I've experienced more joy helping others than I ever have of my own achievements, by far. And I've never run into one person yet that didn't experience the same thing of saying, me helping somebody else along and seeing them flourish and become successful felt better than it did for me personally to do it with myself. Everybody has said kind of the same thing, like helping somebody else through it, guiding them, and seeing them and being proud of them when they achieve great things is a tremendously better than your own achievements. So never look at it like a burden. Oh, I got to go help somebody else out, or I got to, I don't get to do for me, I got to do for them. Never have that attitude. Like, you'll get so much more out of helping them. It really will nourish your soul.
I agree. All right. The last piece was develop and harness your purpose. And I think this is what we talked about. We don't talk about purpose, and we don't talk about how to develop purpose. But there was two pieces on this I really wanted to talk about. Is one, of course, calling on your purpose. Sometimes I call on my purpose, like, I want to be consistent at going to practice is one of my purposes. And so I'll call on that to get the practice. And then I feel better because I kept that going. But the other is develop a mantra, and that we talked about mantras before, and that is develop kind of a mantra to sometimes it's good to say before you in a list to focus your mind. Sometimes it's a way to get positivity back into yourself. I can do this. Literally, there's your mantra. I'm in a terrible mood, so you're like, you know what? I love my dogs. I love my house. I love my friends. That's a positive mantra, right? And that can change. Just saying that in your head to yourself over and over again can change your day, and it can change your fight, right? And and then reflect on what you've done nightly. And this is funny because I kind of and Ron Golder's watching, but the idea is you reflect on the things you do. And I asked him to reflect both with some negative, but I wanted what's positive too. And the good part is we both learned that it was so important to him to develop and to get out of that negativity, to also remember the positive things he did. And, so reflecting on those things. And earlier, Athelstan was on, and he said he has a hard time talking about what he's doing to people. And sometimes it's because your mind is flooded with everything that's happening in a fight. So when you get home, write down what you've done. Sometimes you write it down right after the fight. You just clear your mind and you write it down. And then, but when you journal, it impacts your brain in a totally different way. And when your brain is not working on the fight and it's not tired from the stress of fighting, and you take time and say, how did I really do at practice today? What did I like? What would I like to do better? And you write that down, it releases you. It allows you to be okay with what happened, good or bad, at the fight practice. So just keep those things in mind, as far as developing purpose. Well, I hope everybody had a little bit of fun in this conversation. I really kind of like the way it went in a circle. Tristan, Bess, you guys were kind of already ahead, and we do that all the time. But I think the good part was it showed that all of these things feed into each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Is that a new thing on the bottom? Warning.
Oh,
So that's standard one.
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
One thing I want to post up here is Raumwalder said, being terrified of losing your skill isn't the best motivator to attend a practice. And it isn't. You know what it's funny, we both said this before, and that is, I'm actually terrified of missing practice. I'm terrified of missing my friends and the positivity I get out of practice. I developed something that for 20 or 35 years has made my life better, and I don't want to miss that. And I'm more terrified than that than going to practice and losing, by far. I don't even think about going to practice and losing because, that's just part of practice.
And to me, walking out of practice, having gained one thing, now you've not lost.
Yeah.
You may have been hit. You may have other things now you need to work on. But if you come away with one lesson or one advancement, to me, that's a win. So it's all on how you look at it.
So I guess we got to thank all of our people out here listening to us for providing a place where we can go and be outside of ourselves and give to the community that we love. Because to tell you the truth, Tristan, you brought this up before COVID, and I tell you what, it's been an incredible way for not only me to learn, but me to share with so many other people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
and that's a great thing.
So thanks to our audience, thanks, and especially the conversations that go out there. The conversations, sometimes I'm like, can we just watch the conversation going? You guys. So, Tristan, what do we have next week? You said it earlier.
Well, we mentioned it. We are going to be discussing Bruce Lee's The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and this is going to be a great conversation because not just because of talking about techniques and whatnot. Yeah, he's got a lot of those in the book, but he really assembled a hybrid way of his own style, and we're going to be talking about what he did to analyze how to improve his martial art from what he was given and take it into a whole new realm. So It's a fascinating book. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, totally great stuff. Especially going beyond what your teacher has taught you. Right, this is really the key principle here. Right, so should be great. We look forward to having everybody back next week. Good part is Sean joins us next week, and maybe we'll put a call and see who else might have some input on that book and really love to talk about it as well. But for tonight, for the folks up in the Michigan area, be careful when you're getting that snow off your driveway and driving tonight. For everybody else, be safe out there. I hope you have a great weekend. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.